up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host, as always. And joining me is my guy, Eric Smith. Eric is obviously the senior writer for the Chargers. Happy to have him on again today's show. Eric, thanks for joining me, man. How are you doing today?
Of course, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here, and let's talk about the Bolts.
Yes, a ton of excitement. Obviously, we're 11 days away from the season today, 10 days as of tomorrow when you guys will be listening and watching to this. So we are right around the corner. The Chargers have made their roster cuts. They added some pieces today, and we'll get into some of that, at least in terms of the 53-man roster construction. But, we'll have some other things to discuss as well. But I wanted to start from a general sense. You've obviously covered training camps for several, different coaches, Mike Zimmer. And did you do Kevin O'Connell's first season or no?
No, I came here right after he was hired, so that's summer.
Okay, so you got Zimmer, you get Brandon Staley experience, and now Jim Harbaugh. How does the Jim Harbaugh beat writer experience stack up to what you've experienced previously?
It's pretty serious. It's pretty serious. I think it compares obviously more to like the Zimmer aspect of it. Like Zimmer is an old school coach, and like Jim is just very like hyper focused on football, just like locked in all the time, all day, every day. Lives football, breathes football, eats football. And it's just like very like serious, but like he definitely keeps it light too. Like, he's out there, I'm sure you've talked about it before. He's out there lifting weights with guys and pulling sleds and all that. So he definitely like takes on the vibe of like a player's coach, which I think the players appreciate, but like, he's going to have it his way. Like he's definitely set the standard around here, like his standard, not like a standard. He set his standard. And yeah, just excited to see what it looks like for week one. I feel like this to me, this like 10, 11-day break, like you said, is almost like the longest wait of the year because we're done with camp. We're done with the preseason. Yeah, we still have like a week and a half to go until week one against the Raiders.
Yeah, from a player perspective, I have to imagine like that first practice after roster cuts when you go from 90 to just the 53 practicing yesterday probably was a pretty jarring experience for the players. But we've heard a lot of the players have talked about just like the culture and things like that. How much can you really like tell about the team culture right now as opposed to, next season when we've had like a full year to really learn about Jim Harbaugh?
I think you can tell quite a bit now because Jim obviously is not going to wait a year to implement his culture. Like he started on day one, like since he got here. And adding to that, we won't really truly know. Like we have the bones of it, right, of what he wants the team to be and all that, but we won't really know until the games get here, and then we can see it like in the flesh on the field, like the mindset, the vibe of what he wants. So like we kind of know like kind of what he wants, but then like what it actually looks like, I guess that's what we'll know for week one. I think that's what we're all kind of waiting and excited to see.
Yeah. I think we can see glimpses of it, like even from the preseason game, just like how fast and physical the guys have been playing. It's been a real treat for me. Even the backups to see them flying around has been cool. We, and by we, I mean the fans, we talk a lot about like the roster battles, position battles, who's going to make it, who's not going to make it during training camp. We don't talk a ton about like, Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater, like we do, but not, as much time just because there's other things to cover. So with you, I wanted to kind of do a blue chip check-in, if you will, starting with Justin Herbert, obviously the most important player on the team. Chris Rim had a great article today about him. But we obviously got to see what the team was like without him, and with him. Jim Harbaugh said he heard angels when Justin Herbert got back to practice. So I think it's been a little over a week since he made his return to practice. What have you seen from him since? And obviously access is a little bit limited today and yesterday, but what has it been like to see Justin come back from this injury and get back into the swing of things?
It was great. I mean, last week, you want to like frame it in somewhat of a nice way, but like Jim Harbaugh said, he's like, we have an elite quarterback, right? So like we have a top 3, 5, whatever number you want to say quarterback. So like obviously the play is going to be different on the field when Justin's on the field and when other quarterbacks are on the field. And that's not a slight to the other guys. Like, Easton said, he's like, I can't do what Justin does, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it's not a knock on him. But when Justin came back last Monday, the first day, it was just like a huge, like, morale boost because you could tell it just, like, lifted the entire team that, like you said, the face of the franchise was back on the field. But then by Wednesday, like, I'm sure as we've all, like, read and watched from, like, last week, it was like one of the best practices that I've ever seen from a quarterback. Like, he was just lighting it up. And it just reminded you, like, okay, this is Justin Herbert. He is a top 5, right, quarterback in the league. He's one of the best players in the world at what he does. And he's the guy. He's the guy. Like, he's going to take us, as far as hopefully he can. So, I'm not worried about Justin. Like, if anything, I'm excited because, we've talked a lot about, like, the run game and what that's going to look like. I think maybe taking a little bit of pressure off Justin this year and not asking him to do so much and maybe asking him to do it all. I think that will elevate his play. Maybe he's not throwing it as often, and maybe his numbers, like the pass attempts aren't as gaudy as we've seen in recent years, but maybe his overall numbers are more efficient just because he hopefully has that run game to kind of complement him on the field.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see the explosive nature of that game too, because that's obviously always been a strength of the Greg Roman offense. And working with DJ Chark, I was impressed with him at training camp. Obviously, Ladd McConkey going in. Are you you said you're not concerned about him overall, but are you concerned at all about the 2 weeks and how it maybe might impact his rapport with the wide receivers at all?
No, because he came back and he was connecting with all of them. So, like, I'm not worried about that at all.
Fair enough. I love how AJ Finley, he was like, yeah, this guy just puts the ball where other people cannot. And so it tests your limits, unlike the other quarterbacks can. And like you said, it's not a slight to anybody. Not everybody's Justin Herbert. All right, we'll get to Rashawn Slater here next year. I'm super excited about him. I think he's really kind of come into his own just as like a leader, as a person. Am I kind of crazy for thinking that? I feel like just like his press conferences, what I saw at practice, just really feels like he's very grounded in who he is as a person and as a player right now.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Like, Rashawn and maybe like no offensive lineman is ever going to be like the most vocal guy, right? That's just kind of the nature of the group. But it's pretty clear that Rashawn is the leader of that group.
Mm-hmm.
Drills or whatever. Like, he's obviously the first one in line. He plays a premium position. Like, everyone just kind of looks to him to be the leader, and he's certainly grown into that. I'm in agreement with you. Like, I think he's in for a big year. We have a story. My colleague Omar Navarro talked to Rashawn. That'll come out next week. And
nice.
Rashawn, I can tell you that Rashawn is very fired up for the season. And like you said, he's not a real like rah quiet guy, but like just the vibe you're gonna get from like this interview that Omar did with him was, I read it and I was like, wow, like this could be special.
Well, there we go. We got a little teaser there, but I think people and even Chargers fans forget how impactful he was as a run blocker when he was a rookie, when he was healthy and fully, just ready to get after it. And I think if you go back and watch the first 2 games of last season before he was dealing with all the ankle injuries, like I think you'll see a guy who was right there at that same kind of level. So I can't wait to see what Rashawn can do. And him being a leader is so cool because he's talked about his relationship with Joe and like the things that he's been able to bounce off there. And, bringing Daiyan down to Texas this year, just like a very cool thing too. So, him as a leader, him healthy, I think should be very exciting for Chargers fans.
Yeah. So I wasn't here his rookie year, and obviously 2 years ago he had the biceps, and last year he was kind of banged up here and there. But like, so I have yet to really see him like a full season fully healthy. And if he can do it, like I'm fired up to watch that, because for my money, he's one of the top left tackles in the league. Maybe not like league wide because he's kind of had an unfortunate couple years, but I think if you know the Chargers, then that's definitely the case.
Man, that's a real bummer, missing out on the one season. So hopefully we get that healthy season this year. Ben Herbert can work some magic there. We'll switch sides here a bit and talk about Khalil and Derwin in kind of the same vein here. There's been a lot of talk about Khalil maybe regressing because of age and because of a lack of snaps, and people are not as excited about Derwin as they were in the past. And I think Derwin would admit last year was kind of a tough one for him too. What are you kind of looking for in the first month-ish of the season as it relates to how Jesse is using those two guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Khalil. He's not washed up. I mean, if you watch, I mean, I don't even know, like, I don't even want to like honor that statement. I mean, all you had to do is like watch last year, like on a pretty rough team and defense. He was clearly still balling out, making plays. I mean, 17 sacks. Like, I'm sure you like heard the line. Like, I asked him in the spring about like if he had a chance to like reflect on last year, and he said, "Well, yeah." People were on Twitter were like, "Oh, but he had 6 sacks in a game." Like, Khalil's like, "Is that bad?" Like, sorry. I think Khalil's going to be fine. Like, he's the future Hall of Famer. Um, as he gets older, he still managed to produce. I don't see a cliff coming for him. Like, the way he works and the way he prepares. Like, I think he's still going to be Khalil. And it's kind of similar maybe to the Justin conversation. Like, if Joey can stay healthy, we have Thule, we have Bud. Khalil's not going to need to play every snap. If we have a good rotation, a good kind of plan with the depth, it's not going to all be on Khalil. So if he can stay fresh throughout the season, maybe that helps him. With Derwin, yeah, Derwin probably one of the most fascinating players that I'm interested to watch this year, just because he hasn't been at that previous level the last couple of years. There's a couple, myriad of reasons for that, but he seems energized. He seems focused, and it seems like Jesse Minter really has a grasp on what the plan could be for him. Mm-hmm. Because the talk in the last couple of years, right, is like, wow, Derwin can play all these different positions. But one thing that Jesse has said a lot is, well, that's great, but maybe he doesn't have as much on his plate. We kind of narrow it down. So we obviously won't know any of that, right, until week one, and really the first month or 6 weeks as he kind of gets on the field and the defense kind of settles in. But it's kind of similar to like the Rashawn thing I just said. Like, I haven't seen Rashawn or Derwin like at their peak what they were in the past, and like if they can get there, like especially Derwin, like that, it should only help the defense, which needs Derwin, to play at that level.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see it. Brett Coleman did a wonderful job today on the Chargers channel, breaking down the ins and outs of the Jesse Minter defense, and definitely encourage you guys to watch it. Okay, let's get to some of these nuggets from the 53-man roster. I think there were some really interesting decisions, both from a culture standpoint, from a personnel standpoint. The fan base is really zeroed in on the wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, situation. Obviously, Simi Fehoko, great story, had a fantastic preseason. Brenden Rice did not get a ton of opportunities, but he still makes the roster. Let's start with Brenden. What have you seen from his development from when he got drafted to now, and maybe kind of give some insight as to why, behind the scenes from the fan base perspective, he was able to still earn a roster spot?
Yeah. With Brenden, like, I know he only had like 1 catch in the preseason, and he had 12 targets. Maybe that's what it was. You have to kind of take into consideration like the whole offense, right? Like, it's not just on the receiver sometimes, but I can tell you that in practice, like, he looked pretty good. Like, especially that week that Justin came back and Brenden had kind of mixed in, and the reps he got with Justin was finding him, and he was making plays. So I'd put Brenden up there as like probably one of the most like improved players since the spring. And he's a rookie, so like he's obviously going to do that because like these guys come in and like their heads are swimming and they're trying to figure it out. But yeah, I like Brenden. I would probably like agree with the fans, like that 6-7 receiver spot was something we all kind of had our eye on. They obviously kept 7. But again, it's the initial 53. So like people can bounce around, and I don't know if they're both going to stay on it for the whole season, or what's that's going to happen. But I feel like Simi earned his spot too. Like he obviously flashed as a receiver. We saw the touchdown and the long gains he had in the preseason, but like he also made big plays and noticeable plays on special teams. And like when you construct the roster, you got to kind of take all that into consideration. So I thought both guys like warranted a spot, were deserving of a spot. I was happy for both guys to make it. But as we've learned anything, like Joe Ortiz is going to constantly churn the roster over, as we saw today. So, that's where we are today. But for the bottom part of the roster, like Joe is going to keep working it, and we'll kind of see what happens.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Joe is very proactive, and as Chargers fans, it's very refreshing to see his approach this year. I wanted to hint at the running back room, but the Chargers did put a waiver claim in on Hassan Haskins, so things may be changing a little bit here. But I guess we can kind of focus in on Kaimani and Kaimani Vidal, that is, and his development, because we only saw him the one preseason game. He didn't play last week. He missed a chunk of training camp. Where do you think he's at right now? And obviously, I think the team feels very comfortable with Gus and JK, but how do you see Kaimani kind of fitting into this offense as a rookie?
Yeah, he looked good, right, in that second preseason game. Who was that, against the Rams? Like, he showed good burst. At the time, we were kind of waiting on some sort of spark on the offense, right? And he provided that with his first couple carries. But like you said, like we added Haskins today, and that I think brings us to like 5 running backs, 53. Maybe we keep 5. I don't know, but like it seems like a pretty high number. I think much like Brenden, like Kamani has improved as we've gone along, and that's what you want to see from your rookies. But I don't know. I can't tell you like who's going to be on the roster for week 1, just because I'm not Joe Ortiz.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Last one here for me. Defensively, I think there's 2 really, really interesting players that I think could like really help define the season, and one of them is a highly drafted player-ish, Daiyan Henley, and then AJ Finley as the third safety, former undrafted guy. I think really earned some stripes this year. What do you make of the way that those 2 emerged throughout training camp, and what do you think we can expect for them this season?
I thought Daiyan looked great. I really did. Everyone kind of knows his story. He played offense. He played different positions on defense. He was a safety. Like, I think you have to keep that in mind a little bit. Like, he's still somewhat new to being a full-time linebacker. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, he looks much better than he did a year ago. And it helps that like he's playing next to Denzel, like a vet who's going to help kind of show him the ropes. But I'm like low-key excited for the linebacker group. I know like league-wide that's not the case, if you look at like position rankings or whatever, but I think they could be a solid group, and like I think long-term too with Daiyan and Junior, like that's kind of what you like have your long-term eye on. Like Denzel's obviously going to play this year, and like he needs to play because the Chargers need a player like him in the middle of the defense in the first year of his scheme, and like he can help mentor the 2 other guys. But long term, I like where the linebacker is at. And Finley first he first caught my eye last year on special teams, right? Because like that's where he's going to play, being the 4th safety, 3rd or 4th safety. But man, he just kept making plays in camp on defense this year, and like it was pretty obvious after like a week or 2 that he had kind of grabbed a hold of that 3rd safety spot. And that's going to be a big role, right? Because like we talked about Derwin, like we don't exactly know how Jesse Minter is going to use Derwin, but if Derwin does move around, then that means Finley's on the field with Alohi back there at the 3rd safety. So names that like maybe, like I said, the outside world doesn't really know, but like when it comes to like the nitty gritty of the Chargers defense, like those two guys are going to be important for like the overall team success.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. I think Daiyan, I tweeted out a poll, I think like on last Friday, who's like the fan base's pick for breakout player of the year. And it was like 80% for Daiyan. So the expectations for Daiyan are very, very high right now. And I think rightfully so. Like, I think he showed some really cool things in the preseason, super athletic, as we all know. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in Navarro's defense. All right, Eric, we appreciate the time so much. You mentioned Omar's piece. Do you have anything that Chargers fans can be keeping an eye out for over the next couple of days?
Yeah. So next week, I have a feature on Jim Harbaugh coming out. I sat down with Coach last week for a nice little one-on-one. So yeah, I figured his first game with the Chargers, first game back in the NFL in almost a decade, maybe a good time to sit down with him and see where he's at, how he's feeling. So yeah, I thought it turned out well. So yeah, excited for that. And just, we try to produce good content on Chargers.com. So we appreciate your support.
Yeah, I can speak for the fan base comfortably that we appreciate your efforts and creativity in covering this team. So it's been really, really refreshing to get that side of things. So we appreciate Eric. Everybody, make sure to follow him. Check out his stuff on Chargers.com every single time he publishes. And Eric, we'll chat soon. We appreciate your time.
Okay, man. Thanks for having me.